Off the top tonight, the death of boxing legend Muhammad Ali. He passed away last night after he was rushed to a hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. Today, flags are flying at half-staff in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. His family released a statement saying that is where he will be buried. The mayor of Louisville spoke out this morning saying Ali belonged to the world. Ali was 74 years old and his family was by his side as he passed away. He lived most of his time as a fighter, battling opponents in the boxing ring and then battling Parkinson's disease in the sunset of his life. Today, millions are reflecting on his unforgettable legacy and the profound impact he left on the world.
I'm handsome, I'm fast, I'm pretty, and can't possibly be beat.
Celebrating the legacy of the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali.
I'll always be with me, my heart, my bones, my mind. He ain't going nowhere. He'll always be with you, sir. It's my brother.
The world joining the legendary boxer's family in mourning his death.
The champ would have been very proud of his family.
The final bell came for Ali after a 32-year bout with Parkinson's disease. Ali transcended his sport, known as much for his fighting in the ring as he was for his accomplishments out of it.
Still the greatest of all time.
That self-proclaimed title proven once and again, starting with an Olympic gold medal, then conquering heavyweight champion Sonny Liston, solidifying his status at the age of 22.
Was he always so confident?
Yes, always.
He would go on to prove his mettle against the other boxing greats like Joe Frazier and George Foreman.
Put him as a boxer would be an insult. The greatest boxer, give that to some boxer. Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest human beings that I've ever met in my life.
But his biggest wins came outside the ring, fighting for his beliefs. In 1964, he converted to Islam and changed his name from Cassius Clay
Muhammad Ali
to Muhammad Ali. He also took on the government, refusing to serve in the armed forces. From Vietnam to civil rights, Ali leaves a lasting impact on American culture. His last and perhaps biggest battle against Parkinson's disease, the degenerative disorder robbing the sportsman of his physical power, but not his mental strength. President Barack Obama reflected on the passing of Ali. He put this picture on Twitter saying, "He shook up the world and the world's better for it. Rest in peace, champ." And boxing great Oscar de la Hoya released this statement saying, "Today, as we reflect on his life, let us remember a man who pursued greatness in everything he did and be inspired to hold ourselves to that same standard." Ali's family says he died of septic shock and other natural causes. Ali also had ties to South Florida, like this moment when Ali met the Beatles in Miami Beach. This picture was posted to Twitter by Paul McCartney. It was taken in 1964, 1 week before Ali won the world title at the Miami Beach Convention Center. McCartney's tweet had a link to this message on his blog. He said, "I loved that man. He was great from the first day we met him in Miami. The world has truly lost a truly great man." When he was in Miami Beach, Ali trained at the 5th Street Gym, and it has since moved to a new location on Alton Road, but Ali's memory has stayed. Local 10 News reporter Derek Shore is live in Miami Beach with how South Florida is remembering Ali's life. Derek.
Well, Amy, as you can imagine, a lot of people very devastated, losing a legend. As you mentioned, that location, that 5th Street Gym, has since moved here to Alton Road and 14th Street, but it is still very much a spot dedicated to Muhammad Ali and his spirit. As you can see, a photo of him right here on the wall outside, him at that original location. He was a legend, a great that was never afraid to tell you it. And he spent years here in South Florida fine-tuning his craft, fighting his way to the top, and training at Miami Beach's famed 5th Street Gym.
He established the reason why it's called the world-famous 5th Street Gym is because of him. It was in South Beach when there was no South Beach.
An inspiration to many, the gym's owner now says Ali would still come in and cared about his roots.
Even though he was the most recognizable face in the world, people worked out right next to him. You know, I hear stories all the time about guys that were not professional fighters that would tell me how they got to spar with him.
Miami Beach was also the spot back in 1964 that Ali challenged then unbeaten Sonny Liston, trying to shake up the competition.
And if you like to lose your money, be a fool and bet on Sonny.
After that fight, which he won right here in Miami Beach, the boxer would announce he was changing his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali after joining the Nation of Islam, a decision that would affect the local Muslim community.
Not only as Muslims, but also as Floridians, we celebrate the life of Muhammad Ali, the contributions he made, and also how he was able to project America in a positive way.
In the years to follow, Ali would spend time in South Florida investing in the community, as you can see here when he met with children back in 1986 at Miami-Dade College. And back out here live at the gym, the trainers here say they actually have a program dedicated to Muhammad Ali, his normal program now being shared with other people that use the gym. And the owners of this gym are currently planning a memorial service, some sort of a celebration of his life next Saturday. Of course, we'll give you those details as they become available. In Miami Beach, Derek Shore, Local 10 News.
Thank you, Derek. And Muhammad Ali's Miami connection went beyond the storied 5th Street gym there on Miami Beach. Ali also had a relationship with the Miami Marlins. And last night, the team paid tribute to Ali, but it was when that tribute took place that raised eyebrows. Local 10 sports anchor Clay Ferrero joins us with more. Clay.
Hey, Amy. Immediately after that Marlins game on Friday night, the team announced that Ali had passed away, paying tribute to him. However, that was before Ali's family or any major news outlet had announced the boxing legend had passed away. Now, this is what it looked like at Marlins Park. You can see up there on the big screen Ali's picture with the year he was born, and then this year when, of course, he passed away. However, again, this was before it had been announced anywhere else that he had died. Last night, the Marlins told us this was not an error. Marlins president David Sampson had heard from somebody close to the family that Ali had passed away, and he wanted to get the news out as a tribute as soon as possible. Sampson today, though, said it was all innocent, saying, quote, all of a sudden my phone wouldn't stop ringing and the texts wouldn't stop, and no one could find any confirmation anywhere, and I realized that it's possible that maybe that's the first place that it had been public. He continues, quote, I had no way of knowing that. There's no way I would have broken the news of Muhammad Ali's passing at a Marlins game. He did say that he reached out to a member of the family and that they were okay with it, a friend of the member of the family, and they were okay with what happened. Now, of course, this is part of the history with the Marlins franchise and Ali throwing out the first pitch to help them open Marlins Park back in 2012. There you see him right there with team owner Jeffrey Loria. Of course, we'll have more on the passing of the greatest coming up later on in sports. Amy?
All right, well, complete coverage on the death of Muhammad Ali will continue on ABC World News tonight, right after this newscast. And then be sure to tune in tonight for 2020. A special edition of the show will take an in-depth look back at Ali's legendary life. That's tonight at 8, right here on Local 10.